never knowing Diddy. Now we bad boy, like the 80s business. Pay and pay to give it away. Oprah Winfrey, are you rolling with me? Are you ride or die? Is you eating what I'm feeding to you? Cyanide, eye for eye, a colder heart than I can hide. So if Tony's dark, it's cause I got iron pride. Might rock a suit and tie, but these roots of mine are blue collar, boots and a new car. Grew in Oakland County, had my school father, but I was made by Wayne like the two Carters. I'm your new barber, putting clips on your head to get a buzz. Ready for the love, the sweat, and the blood, and the tears that I shed. You swear.
Bam. Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Party and Politics. Tonight I got my guest, Immanuel Ramsey. You know, you got to put a little special something on a little something on there. AKA Smooth Black. He was recently on my first podcast, the Unsigned Cast. I have recently decided to come out with this one just to have a little broader conversation. You know, obviously Unsigned Cast is really just focusing on the story of unsigned rappers and things like that. But, you know, obviously in our last conversation, I really wanted to explore more topics and I didn't want to be constricted, not saying that Unsigned Cast won't still be a thing, but I really like, you know, not having be bottlenecked on my conversation. You can't keep me quiet, Immanuel. You can't shut me up. You can't keep me down. I'm just going to discuss whatever I want to discuss. And that's the point of this. And God damn it, that's what America's all about. Free Joe Exotic. Unless he actually killed somebody, then, you know, we don't need to free him. He could stay in jail. But, you know, we'll let the lawyers decide that.
Let the laws decide it, you know.
Absolutely, man. So how are you doing right now? How are you holding up with how crazy this world is at the moment?
I mean, it was rough for a while. You know, I had a contractor gig, and that kind of slowed the money way up. So I was falling behind on a lot of things. But, you know, I got a new job recently. His job seems pretty good now. So the money's coming in. So I'm always happy about money coming in, you know.
That's what's up. The money coming in is never a bad thing.
Never a bad thing, you know.
Yeah.
I was Tony Vincent doing, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Now you probably did get to enjoy some of that unemployment money though, right?
The thing is, I didn't really learn about that until maybe November, you know. So I normally, normally with independent contractors, you don't read unemployment. Like it just is not a thing. But
because you're not working, you're not technically employed.
Exactly.
I gotcha.
So with the disaster, I just happened to be listening to the radio, and they were like, "Yeah, man, you know, so we got this pandemic unemployment assistance. You know, normally contractors wouldn't qualify for it, but they do now." So I was able to go do that, and I was able to get a little bit of extra money from that. And you know, if you have kids, like child support takes the money from your unemployment before you get it. So it was like $40 or something after.
Oh damn!
A little $40 a week, you know, every little bit helps, right?
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely. Yeah, I know with this thing, they were pretty much. I mean, I don't know if it's different state by state, but in Michigan, man, you could be like anybody getting that, you know, $1,000 a week. Didn't matter if you made way less than that. You know, I made, you know, I obviously make a little bit more money than that, but it would have been. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, there's part of me that was like, man, you know, I might take a few month hiatus just to enjoy that for a little bit, man. But yeah, you're my DC correspondent, so you know we obviously discuss a lot of political things on your page. Now, the first thing that I'm curious about, because I've had you on my Facebook at least 6 years now. But your page wasn't always this political discussion platform.
Mm-hmm.
So when did that really start happening?
It's hard to say. I think what it was, I was pretty much, you know, as most, you know, most Black people, you know, growing up in, you know, urban type of environments, they end up being Democrats. It's like how we're raised. Mm-hmm. And that's what it was. And I would say around Obama's second term, when I, you know, started to get a little bit older, started to reach kind of in my 30s and stuff like that, I started to become a little bit more conservative. So I started listening more to my conservative friends that I had made from the Marine Corps, started sharing a little bit of stuff. And then, so yeah, if I'm sharing that in these, these more black circles where everybody's Democrat, then they came to argue with that. And then my Marine friends would come and argue with them. And it would just, it just started this whole like dog pile. And, I would just sit back and watch it. And so I kind of just, I kind of started seeking out more kind of conservative viewpoints around the end of Obama's term, like more kind of center right viewpoints, and that's what happened, and then I started like friending people because I already had a lot of Democrat friends from growing up, and then like after I got out of the military, I had like this whole like I was kind of this really like hardcore atheist thing. So I made a lot of atheist friends, and atheists are generally Democrats too.
Yeah.
So I had all these dyed in the wool Democrat friends, and then I started to develop more centrist kind of rightist friends as well. And so my friends, I kind of draw people who like to have the last word.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes from. It's like there's like at least 20 people on my page that they have to have the last word.
100%.
So 10 people fighting for the last word. That's at least 300 comments right there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, so basically it was because when you were in the typical quote unquote Democrat viewpoint, you didn't have more of a centrist point or more of even conservative views. Really, nobody showed interest essentially into those conversations. But once you started posting something that was outside of what your category demographic should have been, then all of a sudden it kind of everything basically kind of came from there at that point.
Because you'll get the people trying to save you, like the Democrats that say like, wait a minute, you're straying, brother, let me come and save you.
Yeah.
Show you what's wrong with what you're saying. And then so I would get in arguments with them. And then a lot of people are conservative, like a lot of people who are conservatives that are white, like they really like to see someone outside of their demographic that has any type of agreement with them.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Whenever like you have a black guy that's kind of conservative, they put him like the front of Fox News,
Yeah.
go to the White House, like, he's black, and he said, I think that
getting the VIP treatment.
Exactly. Like, every black Republican has met Trump,
Yeah.
So like if I decided to be more conservative, I would probably get to meet Trump and whoever the next Republican. I'll be at their RNC next for in 2024, and like that's pretty much how it works,
Oh yeah, 100%. I could see you. I mean, because you're obviously like a reason why I engage so much is because your political views intrigue me. I like having conversations with you because in a way, I remember obviously me and you definitely like a couple years ago, or obviously the last election cycle, we were definitely more adversarial. Like I was, in the Bernie Sanders camp, you were in the Hillary camp, and I always said, you're too much in the center, that kind of thing. But I feel like in a way that now the political spectrum, at least for me, is so crazy. It's hard to see really what anything is. And I feel like I'm center in a different way. Like, obviously, there's some things that some conservative ideals that I identify with in terms of, I believe that, we should have, it shouldn't be like easy just to get in the country. I feel like every country should, has a right to its borders. I mean, that to me doesn't seem like a controversial issue. But a lot of other stuff, like I'm very non-interventionist military wise, and, the pro healthcare thing. And a lot of people consider that populism or whatever, or even nationalism in some cases. But it's weird because I feel like growing up, every politician said those same things and it wasn't controversial. But now that some of those policies are actually starting to be put in place, it is controversial. So what are your thoughts on that?
Man, like right now, I would say since Trump is on his way out, I think things are kind of slowly going back to the way they used to be. Well, hopefully, because I think that in the earlier years when you had Bill Clinton and George Bush and Al Gore and John Kerry, all these guys were kind of pretty much the same. They all had like the same core set of beliefs.
Yeah,
they might have a little bit here, a little bit over there, but there wasn't. But now I would say, in the Obama Trump era, everything is so divergent. It's like either you're over here or you're over there, and there was no middle anymore. So I feel like when you get a boring guy in there like Joe Biden that's not going to make any drastic changes, things will kind of go back to being normal, where you have, you'll have people who have a little bit of conservative views and a little bit of, liberal views, and we can all, get along and be happy together, hopefully, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way it's kind of going. I think
Now,
that's good.
because a good thing to ask, because you did mention like with Trump leaving, things will go back to normal. But the one thing, for better or worse, that I've kind of said about the Clintons, about Biden, even really about Obama, is that it seems like wherever the wind blows, they go. Now that could be good or bad depending on where the wind is blowing. But it seems like in the post-Trump world, Americans have definitely, the way that they view politics has definitely changed for better or worse, right? So, you don't have to be part of this Yale graduate, skull and bones society to become the president. You could be even, it's weird because calling Trump an outsider is kind of a weird thing to say as someone who's grew up privileged and with money, but he was a political outsider, I guess. So I think a lot of his base is like, oh, if he can do it, he's kind of more close to the common man than I am, or than the standard politician is. And I feel like with somebody like him, who's kind of come in with a wrecking ball and basically called everything corrupt, even when it's not, even when some things are normal, the fact that, the trust of the government, I feel like, is at an all-time low across the board. I just wonder, like, how do you put that genie back in the bottle? How do you get people to say, okay, Trump has happened, now we're going to kind of reel things back, trust us to kind of put things back where they were, especially when half the country pretty much is happy where Trump was taking them, so it seems like it is hard to kind of reel people back in.
I think that government will go back, like a lot of times what Walt says on the page is that, back in the day, the government was just something in the background. Politics were boring, and most people who were, uneducated or uninitiated, they stayed out of it. It's like there's gonna be some old white guy in the White House. He's going to be straight down the middle. Some things might happen right here, some things might happen right there. So I think that now that politics will get a little bit more boring, that, most people will kind of ignore it and just let the system work the way it works. And, politics will become less important in everyday life, which is a good thing. Like, it shouldn't be a reality show. It shouldn't be, there shouldn't be Twitter feuds. These people should just sit in the back, make laws and keep things kind of going the way they've been going, and I think that will be the way that things ultimately turn out, unless, depending on who the next president is, the next president after Joe Biden, that is.
Right, you're not opening up the the election result can of worms.
Oh, I think that's not actually a can of worms. It's a done.
No, I mean, like, the way you said it, like it could have been taken as like you're on the fence of how that's gonna go down.
I'm definitely not on the fence with President Biden, and so I think people, like, you have your people on the periphery of both sides that are going to be angry. You have like your talk radio Republicans that are going to be mad for the next 4 years, and then you have your way leftist, like Cornel West type of people that are going to be, super mad that, it's not Bernie Sanders. But other than that, your average common man is going to go to work and come home and, watch TV, and, things will be back to normal,
Yeah. And what's funny that you say that, because me and a friend of mine, we had this conversation not too long ago about how when we were growing up, it was always told, you stay out of conversations about politics and religion, right? Because you don't want to offend people. People take those issues very seriously. So you just didn't hear people especially people that were strangers, talk to each other about it. I mean, that just never happened. And, the world kind of seemed as in one piece as it possibly could at that time. And now, like, it's almost the other way, where if you don't express your political opinion, you are somehow a traitor. You're letting the other side win. It's become so sports team orientated. And I remember, when I was a teenager, because I was always, my dad and my mom for sure were always very vocal about their politics. They just didn't talk about it with people who were conservative or whatever. Like, I didn't know who was conservative in my family like I do now. Like, now I know this person's a Democrat, this person's a conservative, this person. But back then, you didn't know what people believed, right, in your extended family for the most part. So now everybody has to have that conversation together. Oh, why does everybody not like Trump? Why does everybody not like Joe Biden? Why can't you guys wear a mask? Like, these conversations are so much more vocal. And obviously, if you don't have some type of relationship with that person, that can be a tense. There's people getting in physical altercations right now because of this stuff. So, I mean, what you're saying, I do understand, like, when you get a boring guy in there, maybe it becomes less exciting for the common man, common woman, and they're like, oh, okay, this isn't entertaining anymore. We're just not going to care and let the people who've always kind of focused on politics focus on it. And it's crazy because when I was a teenager and I was really into it, because I've always been into talking about politics as far as I remember, and I would get frustrated that the average person wasn't more into it. But now I'm like, please, if we could go back to the way it was, I would take that so fast, because the problem is the majority of people don't really, and this is my opinion, I guess, but don't really put thought in it. They kind of have this set, belief system, and it's almost impossible to shake it out of them. Like, I have a lot of QAnon people on my Facebook. Because one, I went to high school with these people, and some of them are good people. It's one of those kind of, there's good people on both sides. It kind of sounds like that, but some of these people are good people. It's just that, but I've never seen anything as like, again, no disrespect to those people, but this stuff is so out of this world. And I used to be a big conspiracy theorist, but this makes anything I believe like, like, no, it just blows it away. So
people are voting
yeah.
I know you can't just stop people from voting for certain reasons, but it's like these people we should have less of these people voting as possible. People who don't accept reality. Those people should stay on Facebook and make memes and just do whatever they can, stay out of politics and stop like leaving the political pool.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And someone had I forgot, I don't know if I saw this on a podcast or some conversation I saw, but about how when voting was first a thing, you had to be I think you had to be a farmer.
A white male landowner in order to vote.
Yeah. And obviously there's racial issues with that, right? But what someone brought up to defend it was that maybe if you can run a farm, you have enough like capacity in your brain to have the responsibility of voting, where now everybody can vote. And, so that was an interesting thing. I don't think that to that extent voting should be restricted, but I wouldn't mind some kind of like, basic, social studies test. Like a third grade social studies test. I feel like that might be reasonable.
It's like for all their flaws, we're talking about, white male landowners and the founding fathers, they were flawed in what they were thinking, but you can tell that they didn't want everybody to be voting. They wanted people who are of a certain status in society. So if you're white, back then that meant you had some level of status. If you own land, it's like that. Like you have to work that land, you have to maintain it and keep it, and obviously you have some type of status in society. You have something going on between your head, so we're gonna let you vote.
Yeah.
And so that makes sense. But now everybody can vote,
Yeah.
So that I'm sure like there's so much crazy stuff that, if we could like wake the founding fathers up and show George Washington and Alexander Hamilton what America is now, they would probably die. They'd probably re-die,
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Even as they just seeing black people walk around unencumbered, that probably would bother them to some extent.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's so like the whole history of it is so complex because there is no getting away from the foundations of American history with slavery, with the genocide of natives. Obviously women not even being able to participate in the political system till almost 200 years after America was established. So there's a lot of definitely issues with that. And it's complex because the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, that sounds pretty, for like someone who owned a slave and didn't let women vote, it sounds like those are pretty progressive ideas at the time. All men are created equal. Everyone deserves the pursuit of happiness. But it seems so bizarre while they were owning slaves, they wrote these documents. And some of them, obviously there's, things that writings from some of these people where they understand slavery is bad. But, it's kind of one of those things, right? Is it worse to know something is bad and not do anything about it, or not know it's bad at all? That kind of that age old debate.
I think it's like we deal with some of the same issues today. Like when we talk about, these this technology we have, these phones. The only reason we can afford this crazy technology is because there's some kids in China building this shit for like 12 cents an hour.
That, yeah.
We tolerate that because we want to have what we want to have, and we don't want to overthrow the system that quick. Like, I think 150 years from now, people will look back and be like, wow, those people really allowed children to be enslaved, basically, so they could fucking talk and be in different states. But we don't need to be able to be doing this. We've decided that this is what we want to do. And so I think that every generation, even after us, will probably have that type of thing going on. So I think that slavery was like that. It seemed like a lot of the founding fathers, they were like, yeah, this is bad, and obviously we're saying everybody should be free when we're enslaving people, but we can't just let all these people go right now. Like, what are the economic consequences? What are the social consequences? And it makes sense. I can understand that.
Yeah, and even when you go to like the 100 years later to Abraham Lincoln, one of his first initial plans was, after freeing the slaves, sending them back to Africa, which obviously, to a lot of people that could seem kind of racist or different, hurtful to Black people, because again, it's like, it's one of those things it's a thing that's so hard to fix, because yes, you could say sending them to Africa and then they're fully in control of their own destiny. They're not surrounded by white people that view them anything less than human. But again, all these people are descendants from different parts of Africa, so it becomes so complicated in that regard. And maybe just the best thing was the way that it happened, and just kind of the slow progress of just equal rights, and then all the other stuff, because just saying someone has equal rights, again, there's all these other things that if the people who are the bank officer that's loaning you money is racist, well, that doesn't matter if the law says you have equal rights. It's just there's all these things that became very complicated, and even to this day are still some of the stuff that we're dealing with. And it is one of those things, because you did mention, you brought up the thing about the kids in China that are making these phones for 12 cents, maybe nothing. I mean, maybe they're literally slaves, especially with the communist government over there. But I feel like with any equity, anytime you make things more equal, somebody has to give something up. So the slave masters had to give up slaves, and that was an inconvenience for them. I mean, to the extent that they literally succeeded from the country and fought in one of the most brutal wars over it. So it's never going to be convenient. If we decide, hey, we want to hire Americans to make these iPhones, we're probably gonna have to pay more for the iPhones. It's
now most people with phones that society would be changed. Like, all these Zoom meetings wouldn't have been able to happen from the pandemic, because people wouldn't have been able to afford this technology.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons with everything. I mean, and this is, again, this is the only, growing up as an American, I don't know anything else. I don't know the perspective. I know that there's some people who prefer life in different areas, no matter how harsh those things can be. So I'm not here to tell anybody what they should, what kind of country they should live in or anything like that. But I feel like we have a decent balance of things. I feel like there's obviously, my personal views are for some more public kind of financed things, but I still don't want, I think that's a common misconception to me, is like, you're either a socialist or a capitalist, and I don't really see things that way. I think obviously there probably are some people who are like that, but to me, I see socialism and capitalism as things that not only can coexist, but are the only things that can save each other from themselves. Because if you have capitalism fully unregulated and you don't have anything to put in check, you probably are going to have a system where the rich keep getting richer, the poor keep getting poorer, and eventually you just have a rich person buying another rich person's company, buying another rich person's company. And then there's no way, you get essentially communism because you get one person who owns everything and then everyone else has to work for them. So it seems like both systems kind of end up leading the same place if you let them fully it's just one thing. If you have full out socialism, then whoever's in the governing class, those are the people that are in the high class. Those are the people that are above the regular people. But I feel like if you have a system where you have the private enterprise and you say, even like, Joe Biden's thing, which I told you I was totally full support of. If he does this, he's got my support probably through his whole presidency. The public option. Hey, there's this debate. What's better, privatized healthcare or socialized healthcare? Well, let's do an experiment. Let's find out. This way you can keep private healthcare while we're doing this experiment. And, hey, if public healthcare is really that bad, those people are going to end up paying money for private healthcare. They're not going to, and vice versa. If the public healthcare seems better, especially for, I think, younger people, 20 to 30, maybe early 40s, before you really start having health issues, and you only need, the coverage of that minimal doctor's appointment, checkup, that kind of stuff, where you're not going to be, a huge load on the system. You don't really require a lot of care. There's no point of you paying for this huge healthcare plan if you just need the minimum thing. So,
yeah. So it's like, but the thing is with that, when you were saying, if the public option is bad, then people are going to go and get private insurance. But it seems like that generally isn't the way that it works when you have the government involved. It's like we have these government programs like the post office where it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
yeah.
But they pouring more money into it, and so we're going to raise your taxes to make the system, or try to make the system better, even though it sucks and everybody's leaving it. So it's like with you probably don't have a big metro system over there in Michigan, right?
Not as great as you have. We have public transit, but out of all the major cities, I won't say out of all, because we probably have a better system than Kansas, but it's we're the motor city. So basically, I don't know, just to give you a short history, in the 1920s, they were building a transit train system, and the Fords and the car companies had it destroyed because they knew that if more people were on that, they wouldn't buy cars. So long story short, the having your own car is very entrenched in our DNA. And so we don't have the greatest public transit.
Yeah, so we have the public transit. I still ride the public transit. It's okay. It gets the job done, but it's kind of terrible at times. But whenever, ridership goes down and people start hating it, like they just raise the taxes on people who aren't riding the train. And,
yeah.
So it's like, that's how business works. If you have a business that's a train, it's like they have to sink or swim. It's like, okay,
yeah.
If people stop riding our train, our business goes under and we don't exist anymore. We can't operate at a deficit.
Yeah. No, and that's a good point. I don't think that's, the way that we've been doing government, to me, doesn't have to be the way that we continue, because you are right about that. I mean, there's tons of programs that, whether, I've had my issues with the post office, don't even get me started as what you guys call the DMV, we call the Secretary of State. But I feel like if, Andrew Yang had this idea, which I thought was amazing, as hard as it would be to implement, where as a voter, you vote where your tax dollars go. So obviously, if the public transit system is bad and enough people aren't voting for their tax dollars to go there, then they're going to have to act like a business to try to get people to change their minds about that. And I think, because what happens with government programs, and this is where I understand the conservative viewpoint, is that the second you let that one exist, it's almost impossible to get rid of it. They just kind of go in perpetual motion and just becomes another added thing to the budget every year. So that I totally understand. But I think that instead of conservative politicians, taking the position of, hey, I want to completely remove all these public programs, what I think would be interesting is having like a Rand Paul kind of person. He probably wouldn't do it, but I'm just using his name as an example, saying, okay, Bernie Sanders, you have this public health care program that you want to sponsor. Okay, well, let me sit on the board of that. And that way I can monitor how this thing is being financed, trim out the fat, make sure that, just like liberals want to regulate private business, have conservatives regulate the public programs. So it's not so much I want to take this program away, but I'm going to make sure that it's operating as well as a well-oiled machine as it possibly can. And I think that would be what I'd really like to see things to kind of go work in the future.
If Rand Paul was running the public option.
Well, he is a doctor, so I mean,
He would bankrupt it on purpose, like yeah, because I'm sure he has his own healthcare. So yeah, no skin off his back. And do you want Mitch McConnell running the post office? I feel like
no, but what I'm saying is those guys are just going to try to remove everything. But I'd be interested, especially, and this is, I guess, a good point, because we talked about earlier how you kind of feel like with Joe Biden, politics are going to go back to normal. But I feel like populism has become kind of let out of the bag, and both people on the right and the left are starting to feel like that. So even conservative politicians that are getting elected, they are kind of seeming to have more of a populist message than an old school conservative cut all programs kind of message. So I don't know again, everything happens in trends, so we'll see. But it kind of seems like, at least right now, that's how things feel. It feels like instead of having the Mitch McConnells or the Rand Pauls, you may have like, the way even Ted Cruz is talking about things, him working on bills with AOC and different things like that, that even though they definitely are far apart politically, the fact that there even is common ground between those people seems kind of strange, right?
Cruz and who?
AOC.
What bill is this?
There was the biggest one I know is they talked about, I think it was regulating political financing. So basically, like, I don't know if it was so much stopping political financing, but if you do finance a politician, you have to, and I might be butchering this, but it was something about that, like you have to disclose who you are, how much money you donate, something like that.
No dark money.
Right, that kind of thing. And then I think they also are on the same page in terms of regulating the big, tech companies, that kind of thing, which conservatives feel like the tech companies are picking on them. And obviously liberals are always down to regulate big business. So you can definitely kind of see an alliance there brewing.
Two things I think that goes against the core principles of conservatism. You can't say, oh, I don't like how this business is treating me, so I think that there should be a bigger government to regulate this business because I don't like it. That goes against, and then the other thing, like, I think more of what you were saying about people like AOC and people like Ted Cruz both working together. And I think that will contribute more to politics becoming more boring, because now if you're team AOC or your team Ted Cruz, it's like, oh, they're working together on stuff. We have common ground. We don't have to argue. And it's like, so it just becomes one big boring mass of politicians where they're all kind of like the same person.
Yeah.
But then only people who are really interested in politics like you were will be interested in it. Because like I wasn't interested in politics. I didn't really know what a Democrat was until I was already a man, like Bane said.
Like Bane.
I was in the Marines, and if you remember, around the time of Obama that first election for Obama, there was McCain was saying we need to do a surge. We need to have more people over in Iraq. And I was in the Marines, and I was like, I don't want to go to Iraq, but if there's, I know I probably am. So I was watching this one guy on MSNBC called named Keith Olbermann.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, when I heard him talk, I knew I was a Democrat at that point, and that was how I learned. I was like, I like this guy. I don't know what he's talking about. He had like the running tab on I guess when Bush said mission accomplished. And so every day in the news, it's been day number 793 since Bush said mission accomplished.
Yep.
I wish he was still in the news. Like I wouldn't agree with him as much today, but I did like, I forgot the name of his show. I think it was Turning Point, or it was something. His show back in 06, 07. It was a good show. He got fired because he did something stupid, but it was of course, and now he's nowhere.
Yeah, well, he was on. I think he was on ESPN. Oddly enough,
ESPN. I was still following him after that, but
yeah,
on MSNBC, it was I wasn't in the politics, so I just happened to be flipping the stations one day, and I stopped for him, and because I think I like the camera angles he was using and everything, and after that, I was interested in politics.
So your parents weren't like vocal about like even during like the Bill Clinton era, like these Republicans trying to impeach him, all that kind of stuff. Like they didn't really talk about it in front of you or really share their opinions as much.
No, I mean, I they knew the difference between Democrats and Republicans, and they went with the Democrats. I remember I asked my dad what the difference was. I was probably like 10 or something. And he was like, yeah, see, Republicans, it's like Democrats want things to move and change for the better. He's like, Republicans want things to go back to the good old days.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't make any sense to me when I was 10, but now it does.
Yeah.
And my family, like, I would say everybody I know in my family is the straight Democrat. It's like there's no questions asked. So it's like a wrong conclusion. Nobody really has political debates in my family.
I gotcha.
So
there's not a lot of political discourse going on. It's just pretty much this is just, you know, we're gonna go in the voting booth and kind of vote.
We're voting. Like I remember when I went to vote, like I live around here in this same type of area. When I went to vote for the president for the first time, which was earlier this year, there was where did I go? I went to it was a school, and the lady was there watching. The lady, she was watching me vote. Like she was like, all right, come over here, and she's like, you push this button and you push that button, and she stood there and watched to make sure that I pushed the button for Joe Biden. We're supposed to do that. I was going to vote for Joe Biden anyway, but if I was going to vote for Trump, she was going to sit there and look right at me, and it's like, get away with that. Like I think another place where things are more kind of down the middle. Like
yeah.
I don't think that would have flew because somebody would be like, this lady was watching me vote, just looking at me, and it's like.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something you're gonna open up the election can of worms all over again.
Back up, yeah.
We'll edit it out. But yeah, I mean, I think you talked about this. I think we were talking on election night, and you were pretty much talking about how your area doesn't really matter. Nobody is going to make a difference there in terms of the election. It's really like it seems like it's really like the Midwest. It seems like overall, the Midwest is really who decides the presidency, which is kind of weird, you know, like it's like, oh, is Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, you know, where are they, Pennsylvania, whoever they're voting for, you know, it's almost like you could just not have voting the rest of the states and just just put all the voting pressure on the Midwest.
It's like that. So people always say, you never like the electoral college just so, you know, New York and California don't decide the whole election.
Yeah.
Like, we're just gonna let, you know, all those still where like 3 million people collectively live. We're gonna let them. It's like that doesn't make, you know, like there are more people in like certain counties in California that are probably throughout the whole Midwest.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, the electoral college, I mean, I understand both sides of it, but it's because yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that like, especially when you see that certain people in certain areas always vote the same, but then giving, I guess, like a state that doesn't have as much population a chance, because then, you know, maybe like Montana or whatever, that's Idaho, Utah, these people would never really be having any influence in the election. But obviously at the same time, Texas is gigantic, you know. So I think, you know, it might just wash out, because if you look at the overall, when it shows like that huge thing under Trump and Biden, you know, 70 million, 75 million, whatever, it's pretty close overall in terms of the Americans. So even though each state may have a smaller population, the overall people seem to still be 50-50. You know, it seems like if you got rid of the electoral college, the Republicans would still have somewhat of a chance.
Well, you would think that we will be done with the electoral college in that case. It would be a lot easier to just count all the votes.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, do a national popular vote, you know. But yeah, so I think that if they did a national popular vote, it wouldn't be a landslide as far as, you know, Democrats winning every time. But I think they would win every time by, you know, a couple million votes, which would wash, but it would be like, you know, 73 million to like, you know, 69 million or something like that, somewhere within that 1 to 4 million. I think they would win every time because there are just so many more people in, you know, California, New York, Washington, you know, places like that.
No, I see what you're saying. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, I'm so like, I don't really care too much about like the electoral college. Like I'm not like, oh, we need to defend the electoral college at all costs. And the other way, I'm just, I feel like things definitely should be modernized to some degree. I understand the argument of if you have these separate voting rules in every state and the different voting systems, it actually prevents hacking more because, I know a lot of people, Joe Rogan brings this up a lot about why can't we just all vote on the internet? But if you do that, I think you're more you're more at risk of election being played with, because that means it's all on one centralized server, as opposed to these just individual ballots that got to be counted old school. So even though there's going to be mishaps with that, is the other way better?
Like if we can bank online, like Bank of America probably has billions and billions of dollars just online. We protect our CIA, FBI type of stuff. It's all online. I mean, I don't think it's online. They do it digitally, so it's like if they can protect our national secrets and we can spend billions of dollars online. I feel like we should be able to vote online and have just invest all the money in there to protect those systems. But I mean, it wouldn't be foolproof, just like it isn't now. There like other people like counting these votes by hand and stuff like that.
Yeah. What I like to see is, and I mean, I guess people would kind of know who you voted for, but when you, I guess every state's different, so I don't know if it's like this for you, but like where I vote, you fill out that little Scantron thing, right? And then you take that Scantron to the dispenser, it sucks it in, and it counts the vote, but it doesn't tell you like the scoreboard. What I think, just as you the voter, so like let's say I voted for Joe Biden, I voted for Jill Stein, whoever I actually ended up voting for. I don't even remember her name. That's how terrible I am. But if you have a scoreboard, so you can say, okay, I voted for Joe Biden. So right now the scoreboard says in my district Joe Biden has 300 votes. I input it, now Joe Biden has 301 votes. So I, as the voter, can full check that thing, with my own eyes, and I can say, okay, this is working. Where we don't get to see that. We just put our thing in there and they get counted at a later time when we're not even around. So I think that scoreboard thing is something that easily can be done. And that's a way that could, because we need to get people. The problem is after Trump, so many people have distrust in the system. And I think even before, like the Hillary Clinton thing with the Russians, and then with him with, I guess the Russians again, or China, whoever they're saying is rigging who's for who. It's been like, my dad was actually just talking about this, and he's like, I don't think I've ever seen this much within like 4 years, people thinking that another country is influencing the election, one way or the other. Yeah, obviously, I remember in the Bush years, there's a whole thing about that voting thing in Ohio with John Kerry, but that was like an internal thing, and maybe we don't take it as serious when it's us doing it to us, but when a different country is involved, then it
National security. But no, circling back, you talk about who you voted for, but you didn't say. So you're saying that you voted for
Jo Jorgensen is what I voted for, but I couldn't remember her name, so that's how terrible I feel.
Who is that? I was like, is that a guy? I was like, oh yeah. Right. So you actually voted for Jorgensen?
I did, yeah, just because I honestly,
The protest voting.
Yeah, I just with Joe Biden, again, that's where me and you, I think, differ, is you like the politics as usual, where I'm kind of the anti the politics as usual. And my only, like, if Trump was the guy that he pretends to be, then I would probably be a Trump supporter, but he's not that guy. He's a fake populist. He doesn't really like anything that sounds populist or for the people is really just blanketed with some hidden agenda he has for himself. So, hey, we're going to throw the attention of the media over here so I can bail my cronies out of jail. And, that's who he is. He's a con man. But he says, like, as rappers would say, he's talking that shit. He's talking that shit. And I think even to deny that I didn't feel the seduction of that to some degree, I'd be a liar. because, you know, it felt like after 2016, when again, you know, I felt like, and a lot of Bernie supporters felt like, hey, we got kind of, you know, cheated a little bit. And then here he is, and he's really, which he did strategically. I think if I was like a political consultant to him, I'd tell him to do this as well. Appeal to the Bernie supporters and say, hey, you know, do what he did. Hey, you guys come over here. I'm going to do the things that you guys want to do. We're going to defeat Hillary together. And as much BS as that really is, it becomes, you feel like what happens. And I think even now, I kind of feel like a man without a country with like the political team. And it's just like, if Joe Biden goes the way of the public option, and I feel like there's some give. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to do the Green New Deal. You don't have to do universal college. You know, these things are crazy big ass that anyone could put on anybody. But something that gives us, that I feel like the fighting and the, you know, the playing politics pays off to some degree, where I don't feel like it's continually, and I know you disagree with this, but me and Troy bring this up, and I think me and him are in agreement with, where we feel like the country has continuously went right because the Democrats, at least for the past 30, maybe even 50 years, have been placating towards them, instead of where the Republicans are playing hardball and they're saying, we're not going to, you know, we're not going to work with you. We're not going to work with you. And the Democrats constantly are extending the olive branch. And even Obama, you know, in a recent interview, he kind of said basically, if we don't do that, then, you know, nothing will get done, kind of thing. So it does seem like we don't, for depending on where you are on the left, it can seem like you don't have a dog in the fight sometimes.
I mean, I think that Joe Biden will try to do the healthcare thing that you said, the public option. You know, it all depends on if he's able to, if he has the juice to get it through the Senate. You know, I don't think that the Democrats are going to take the Senate back in 2 years. You know, so if the Democrats are able to take the Senate back, then I think that there's a good. So if the Democrats take the Senate back in 2022, and Biden is still not able to get through the public option, then I could totally understand why you and Troy would feel the way you feel. But if the Republicans maintain the Senate and they block everything that he's trying to do, then it's like, you can't, you know, he can only do.
That's a good point. And that's where I think I'm more lenient than Troy is. I'm more willing to give people a chance. And if I see that, because again, you're right, I can't judge Joe Biden if he's trying to do something and the people that he's up against aren't letting it happen. So that's fine. You know, if I see that all I can ask for is that you tried. If you try to get something done and it's not happening because the opposition is just not letting it happen, then again, I can't be upset with you. I mean, you've done your best, and it's just it's effort. It's okay. You know, I see you want this to be done. Put pressure on the Republicans to do it. If they still don't do it, if, you know, whatever kind of deals that you can make aren't just able to happen, then it is what it is. You tried. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. And, you know, again, I don't think Joe Biden is going to do it because he truly believes in a public option, but I think he feels that the pressure from the left and a big portion of the American people. But I don't really care what the reason is. I don't care if he's doing it, you know, to get more popular. That, you know, that kind of stuff does not matter to me. It really comes down, these people are only in power for so long. So whatever their personal feelings are, I don't care. It's just, what are you doing? And I feel like we as citizens really should treat them like, you know, what have you done for me lately, kind of thing. And one way or another, I mean, you may feel from a conservative point, what have you done to reduce the debt? From a liberal point, what have you done, you know, in terms of public goods and different things like that. So I think we all should be constantly, you know, asking ourselves, what is this person doing, knowing the policies. But again, that kind of cycles back to that, who should be paying attention to politics, who shouldn't. And it is like an endless kind of thing. It almost seems like.
Yeah, and I think that smarter people who should be paying attention to politics, they'll realize that, you know, politicians are like regular people. They do what's in their best interest. Like, people expect a guy to run for office on a certain set of principles, and maintain that exact same set of principles for 40, 50 years. It's like that's not how it works. It's like you wouldn't
Yeah.
even be elected. It's like if you were against gay marriage in 2005, that was acceptable back then. But
Yeah.
2015, that's fringe now. So it's
Yeah.
like they say, oh, these Clintons or these Bidens, they're just blowing in with the winds, but the people are the winds. It's like if people,
Yeah.
society changes, you have to change as a politician, or you're going to get voted out. So it's like like if a politician should be susceptible to societal pressure. You know, if a guy just comes in there and says this is what I'm about and I'm not changing, and for 40 years, it's like he's useless. You know, but that's what people some
Yeah.
people want. You know.
Well, that's what scared. I mean, that's what scared me about Trump. Not Trump himself, but Trump, like the Trump supporters. Is I feel like, and a lot of people, I've talked about. My dad, for example, was a militant Democrat. His whole, as far as I remember, this is he instilled. I've told the story, I think, on your page, but I'll just say it again here. Like, when Jennifer Granholm was, I think it was, I don't know if it was her first term or her second term, and I was turning 18 that year. This dude came in my room, shook me out of bed, and was like, "You need to go register to vote and vote for her, otherwise I'm kicking you out." So that's how militant this guy was. This guy was not about games, about any dissent. He was very like, he was one of the best soldiers the Democrat Party could ever have. And to see him, I mean, all through Obama, everything, and then with Trump, for them to sway him, it's, and I know there was a bunch of blue collar older guys that happened to, and women, because I think what a lot of people felt like is like, I may not agree with everything the guy says, but at least I know where he stands. Even again, I don't think that's true with Trump. I think it's an illusion, but he's good at selling that. He's good at saying, and in a way, and I've said this before, Trump is maybe the best politician in terms of that political kind of getting you to believe something he's saying, almost better than anyone else, because he seems so unfiltered. You kind of are like, oh, well, he has to be saying how he really feels, because why would he be talking like this? So I don't think he's smart enough to be consciously doing it. I think he's just being a liar is so built into his DNA that it just comes off natural, and that it's unfortunate that something like that is a strength for him, and he's able to kind of duck on all these scandals and all this, because he can literally look at you in your eye and basically say he's done nothing wrong, whereas as a person who has any type of honest bone in their body, they're going to have some type of show that they're lying, right? They're going to have some type of tell, but he doesn't. He's just able to just look at you in your soul and like completely forget that he's ever done anything wrong.
Go with him when he lies like that. I remember I knew one guy back in the Marines, guy from Texas, straight up. I'm sure he voted for Trump. I haven't talked to him in like 15 years. I'm sure he voted for Trump. I fucking hate Bill Clinton. I fucking hate his guts. He was like, that guy looked us straight in the eye as a people and lied to us, talking about the whole Monica Lewinsky.
Okay, yeah.
I wouldn't piss on that guy if he was on fire. Wow, like so, but it's like yet and still, I'm sure he's watched Trump lie to us for 4 years, look us right in the eye, and say stuff we saw happen, and he just go right along with it. That's it's good con man skills. It's like like we have low level con men that we all seen in life that are good at talking and good at lying and good at convincing people to do stuff that's against their best interests. It seemed like he's just doing that on a presidential level, and certain people they go for it, and I think what you were saying plays a part in that, because we've had politicians kind of just like double talking us for all these years. So it seems like he's giving it to you straight. At least he's because like Obama, they didn't feel like Obama was talking like he was talking over a lot of people, that were more blue collar, so this guy's like, he's cursing, he's saying whatever he feels like it. And so I mean, I get it. I don't like it. I don't condone it. But I mean, I can.
You understand the psychology of it. You understand how people can be seduced by it, and But maybe some people, I guess, will understand that that's an illusion. But I feel this is while we're on Trump, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are at this, because even though someone like Bernie Sanders, someone like AOC, the squad, these kind of people, right? These are not in the same political party as Trump, but it almost seems like they were born out of that same moment that, I'm not going to watch what I say. I'm going to just completely, go in full attack mode. Do you feel like they are maybe not aligned politically, but aligned personality wise, or just they kind of saw the Trump moment and they're like, hey, we can do this on our side too? Like, do you feel like they kind of are part of the same kind of thing in a sense?
Yeah, because I mean, I think in our generation, in the generation that you were talking about, I remember looking at debates when I was like in sixth grade and be like, wow, these guys are so smart. Like I'm here and these guys are elite. They're like better human beings. Let them deal with that complicated stuff that's politics. I'll just go to work. So I think over time, we just got used to, yeah, politicians are better and smarter than us. Let them deal with the complicated stuff and we'll deal with our regular normal lives. And so people kind of got tired of that over time. Like that's what people wanted back then. But then people kind of got tired of that when they saw that these politicians weren't doing what was in their best interest. So like, yeah, I would just rather have some guy come here and give it to me straight, and just dumb it down for me. And so Trump was able to meet that need. And then, like you said, like on the flip side of the coin, you have Democrats that are coming out and oversimplify. I think that's the oversimplifying things as well, and that makes these kids that just are just starting college. They feel like they can relate to AOC because she's young, she talks like them, and she oversimplifies things as well. Like
Yeah.
For it, it's like, so I think that it's all about oversimplification now. Like Trump gives these very simple solutions to complicated problems that no one's been able to simply solve in 75 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that all these people are kind of in the same boat in that way, that they just kind of give you the oversimple, give it to you straight. Sometimes there is no straight answer. There are some questions that don't have a simple answer. It's like, oh, we're gonna lose something. We're gonna lose either way, but we lose more here, we'll lose less here. But then over time we'll lose. So it's complicated stuff that people don't want to hear complicated. They want to hear, give me something simple.
Yeah, cut and dry.
I'm done with my day.
Yeah.
And those, like we were saying, our overarching theme here, those people should not be paying attention. They need to go back to where they were and leave this to the professionals,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure too, once like sports shut down everything with the COVID stuff, that really only left politics because sport, this is again one of the things, thinking back of who I was 10, 15 years ago when I was a teenager, early 20s, very in my I would say radicalized political phase, and really upset with people not being politically involved, and like, oh, you guys just pay attention to these sports, like these don't matter. But now like I mean, after the way it is now, I would totally, and I said this earlier, totally take that back, because it's just, you're right, unfortunately, it's just those people, especially having that sport team mindset already, because they're so driven on, oh, I'm a Patriots fan, you're a Green Bay fan, screw you kind of thing. Like, so they take that into actual politics, and now we have such a heated environment where it's just like, well, it's the Proud Boys, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, or just random people at these events that just are looking for a problem and stuff like that, and all this intermingling of extremism. So I think it's just wild, and part of me feels like things just happen cyclically. Like if you look at the 1920s versus 2020, it seems eerily similar in so many ways, whether it's the Spanish flu, COVID, whether it's the rising up of populism in the world and all these dictators, and basically dictators telling their people, hey, we are a great people, we are a great nation, we should come first, and the breaking up of these alliances. And now, look at what we have going on with the EU, and all these different things going on. So it seems like this is all kind of happening again. And I don't know, like, are we even in control of this? Like, is it just kind of this roller coaster ride that we have to just ride through through the centuries. I mean, what are your feelings on that?
I think it's like the pendulum. It's like a pendulum, basically. It's like those were some good parallels that you drew. And you also have the economy crashing
Yeah.
with the 20s, just like it is now, or it was. So it's like, yeah, I think that right now you have you know more attention in politics from regular people. And I think that over time that's going to go back down, and we're going to have our same regular, boring, Jimmy Carter, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford type of politicians that nobody cares about. And then I think eventually somebody important will resurface. Like there will be a new type of Obama or Trump type of candidate, which will redraw attention. Or if like something big like a war or a big terrorist attack that'll draw people's attention back to it. So I think it'll go around in circles, which is probably good. A circle of life type of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it is just interesting because, and one thing, as someone who's always criticized Hillary Clinton, a big epiphany that I've had recently is that, you know, during one thing that I have to say, because I may not, I may have my issues with her personally, but at the same time, I don't know her in real life. So she could be a completely different person than I think she is. But politically, I have to give her credit, because if you look at a lot of things during the Clinton years, the Bill Clinton years, a lot of the stuff, Hillary Clinton was behind the scenes making the deals. She was doing I mean, I feel like Bill Clinton might have just been kind of on the, in the seat for the ride, and she was actually really making these big decisions. So I feel for her. One, two, I have a lot of respect for it in that regard, because it's gotta suck. Like, especially, I mean, we still haven't had a woman president. So it still can seem for women that may never happen, that whole glass ceiling, whatever kind of thing. But if you actually were doing the president's work and you don't get to have the historic credit for it, that's got to be shitty. That's got to be a bad feeling. And she's had to shoulder so much stuff where Bill Clinton was this adored person historically, and so he got to have the credit of a lot of things that happened in the 90s, and didn't really get, at the time, I'm not saying now, but at the time it didn't seem like he got blamed for really anything until the Monica Lewinsky thing, and that's where it seems like the public opinion maybe started shifting on him. But even after that, in terms of the eyes of liberals, he was greatly favored. I mean, you would have him, if you were running for any type of Democratic office, you needed Bill Clinton to support you. I mean, that was a huge thing. So it is kind of fairly new in terms of probably the internet and conspiracy theories and all this kind of stuff, where he's kind of looked at as a villain. And, her, I unfortunately don't think that the public maybe ever was super a fan. Michelle Obama, everybody loved Michelle Obama for the most part, right? She was a, when I think of the first lady, she's immediately who pops up in my head. She was my first lady. Obama was my president. I mean, he was the first president I ever got to vote for. So it's just like these people, they are stamped in my head of these kind of examples of things. But yeah, I mean, I feel like with Hillary, she probably does better or worse, because it's no different than like a war strategist. Like, you can obviously hate the Nazis and Hitler, but you could see, okay, for a moment they were making some military strategic decisions, and being able to rise from, like, a dirt poor country after World War I to becoming a real threat on a global basis. From a military standpoint, you have to say, oh, that is kind of impressive. So I think that you can, even if you're enemies with somebody, you can be unbiased and say, okay, this person has accomplished things. And Hillary Clinton, for better or worse, has definitely accomplished a lot of things politically, than almost more than most people, I think, in that way of life.
failure, like, which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like that lends a lot of credit to how women always talk about they do so much work and they don't get any credit for it. And it's like, so when people think of Hillary Clinton, she'll probably go down in history as the person who almost was president twice. And it's like, instead of all the other things that she did, like how she was behind like what Obamacare was before it was Obamacare, and she probably had a lot of things that she did during the Clinton administration. You know, she was the Secretary of State. She was a senator from New York. You know, she was a lawyer. You know, so
Yeah. Oh
what,
yeah. I mean, a very, very big resume and stuff. And yeah, I think it's one of those things that the presidency ultimately is a popularity contest. It's not about what your skills are, what you bring to the job. I mean, you can be, if you have a big enough personality, obviously we see that with Trump, and even, going back to George Bush, and really some conservatives would say Obama because he didn't have a long time on the job before he became president. I remember that was a criticism of him. I mean, it is really about the personality. So it's, I feel like the politics definitely comes second, and you're voting for somebody who you see something in, something clicks with them, whether it was George Bush, I could drink a beer with this guy. For me with Obama, it was like, this guy has been on the opposite end of, American privilege, did not come from a well-off family, was not from the political class where the president before him, literally his dad was president, and Yale and all that that secret kind of society kind of weird stuff, that where you're, just kind of around that your whole life. He came from a single mom. I mean, the fact that he could even have a chance at the presidency made me buy into the system. And I know I'm not alone there. I know that a lot of people felt like that, probably more Black Americans than me. I'm just kind of sharing some kind of link with it that I relate to. And when he became president, it was like, okay, like I felt more patriotic than I ever was. I mean, forget 9/11, forget any other type of moment since I've been alive. When Obama was president, I was a proud American. I think I played that, and I'm proud to be an American. Like, I think I was blasting that song, like on 1,000. So it's, it's crazy how much these things can have an impact on you, especially if you are politically invested. But I think Obama, like Trump, did get a lot of people to the fold that wouldn't traditionally be in it because they either felt disenfranchised or maybe felt politics was boring, because he was just such an exciting guy to watch. I mean, he just had so much energy, and you just couldn't hate the guy. I mean, they had to come up with so much, just ridiculous stuff to get upset. I mean, the tan suit, I mean, it's the stuff that they had to get upset with this guy about, just to be able to have a show. I mean, I know a lot of these people who are in these news shows probably didn't even feel that way, but they're like, we got to have something. We're Fox News. We got to come up with something to attack this guy on. And I know he definitely probably made it hard for him.
You talking about Obama, or are you talking about Trump?
No, I'm talking about Obama made it hard for Fox News to criticize him, even though they still did. But they had to go, like, you could tell that they were like, trying to find needles in haystacks with it.
I think you said Trump at some point. I think you said it was hard to hate Trump, and I was like, what?
No, I was talking about Obama for that. What I said was similar with Trump, was that Obama brought a lot of people into the fold politically, like voters that wouldn't normally be, because they felt disenfranchised or didn't care. Politics wasn't exciting. That's more where the similarity I brought between the two.
Trump at some point. I thought we were still on Trump. I was like, no, it definitely wasn't hard to hate Trump.
No, I don't think it was hard. Even Trump support, even a lot of people I know who voted for Trump are like, man, I wish this guy didn't do that. I wish he didn't say that. I wish, a common thing I hear from the people that are reasonable, I think, that are Trump supporters, is that I hate the guy, but I like the policies. I think that's, a common thing I hear from people. Now, just to kind of end things off, we were just talking about Obama, and one thing, that has been my complaint, and I've been trying to kind of think about it more, is that I felt like Obama sold me a bag of goods in terms of, like, at the time, I kind of felt like he was running on Bernie Sanders' platform, and then it just became like, he became more moderate and more moderate and more moderate and more moderate towards the end. So what I wonder, like, what you think, do you think that, like, he actually was a moderate the whole time, or he actually had more, like, leftist views at the beginning, and then once he got in that chair, he realized, like, there is so much more to this than I probably thought. And so you do think it's like that? Like if he never became president, maybe he would have ended up being like part of the squad or something like that.
Yeah, I think yeah, like once you actually have to do these things, then you realize how hard it is to get done. Like he was talking at some point, I think he was talking about getting the president's daily briefing in the morning. I guess that's you heard of that thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, so he was saying it's so like daunting to see how many different ways the world could just blow up at any time. How
Yeah.
all this stuff is that we have all the time. Yeah. So and he was like, America doesn't change, not like a speedboat. It's more like, an ocean liner. You can't just make a hard right turn. And
Right.
it has to turn really slow. And it's like that. That's how it works. So I think once he realized how things worked and how things are slow and how people can trip you up and how complicated all this stuff is. These bills are like what, thousands and thousands of pages long that they don't even actually read.
Yeah.
If he learned, I think it taught him different stuff in life. He learned that, I can only do so much. And then I think he maybe learned that, well, maybe that's not so bad. Like if we look at the history of America, all the changes that have happened in American history have happened very slow. Like
Yeah.
the Jews didn't just get freed, and that took 150 years, and then it took like another 100 years for slaves to get their civil rights. Leading up to the Civil War, like the Civil War was brewing since the beginning of America.
Yeah.
So like every change, like women getting the vote, all that stuff, it took a long time. It like so the founders, I think they wrote it into the Constitution and all of our documents. They made it purposefully hard for things to be changed really quickly. So I think that's how our country works.
Yeah.
I think that he learned that lesson, and I think if he learned that, yeah, as you get older, you start to kind of accept the world for what it is instead of trying to change the world so much. And I think that a lot of that happened to him as he was in office. I think that when he was younger, even in his 30s and 40s, like everything kind of was working out for him. Like he went to Harvard, and then he was with this law firm, and then he was teaching law here, and then he was a community organizer, and then he was in the Senate. So everything pretty much worked out the way that he wanted it to go. And then once he got into the White House, into that seat, and you learn that no, people are going to stand in front of you, and you're going to stand up to them, and you're going to fail, and they're going to political posturing, and then that might be that's how the world goes. It's like you kind of got to do what you can, basically. So I think that's what it was, to make a short story long.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're probably right. And I think like even like it's weird because there's definitely things where I'm like, I still am like, man, what like I would love out of anybody, which is never going to happen. But if I could have a conversation with them and be like, okay, what are your like real like views on, forget what can actually be done. What are your actual like beliefs on it? Like I would love to have that conversation. But yeah, I remember like recently he got that whole thing. A lot of people were upset because he said defund the police wasn't a good platform, or it's not good verbiage. And I agree with him there. I think that it's I think it's one of those things where, again, I feel like in a weird way it's kind of giving the Republicans a free pass, because who's always trying to defund social programs? The Republicans are. So Republicans have been defunding the police for years. So it's just like, that's not, it seems like so weird to like, when I know that that's not what a lot of them mean. They just mean restructuring the funding, and that's too hard, too complex to put in a catchy thing. But yeah, I mean, I think that that some of that stuff, and that's where I've either been pushed more moderate in some ways, or just like I'm like, okay, I see like some of this stuff on the far left, and it's like, even though I've been a Bernie Sanders person, an AOC person, it's like some of this stuff I'm like, I'm not just gonna hop onto this because I'm supposed to be part of this club. It's like there's good there's good police officers. Obviously, the ones that do this stuff need to be penalized, and as heavily, and need to be removed from the force. But I think the defund thing can be a slippery slope, because now you have people who are working blue collar jobs, maybe losing pensions, maybe, this kind of stuff. And we want, as people on the left, I feel like we should want these, these blue collar jobs, these public jobs, and as long as they're doing them correctly. But again, that's a whole other thing, because if you're in a union, you can't be fired. That's again, another layer of it. That's an issue that needs to be corrected, I think.
Yeah, then they talk about, like, when they say defunding, rather than they say, well, like, the police, they come through, they have all these, these military gadgets and these big old guns that they necessarily shouldn't have. And it's like, but me and you, we listen to music, we know what's going on in the hood, and you hear they're coming through with AK-47.
Yeah.
And so, do you expect the police to come protect you, and they have the Carl Winslow 6-shooters and like choppers with the drum on it? It's like, that doesn't make sense. They have to come to something bigger than what the bad guys have, So it makes sense. Like, people are afraid of the police because they know that the police are going to come through with some big shit that they don't have. And it's like, I think that they need to retain that. If the police are coming through with some fucking 1980s weaponry, and you got all the special shit, the AKs with the M-beams and the shell catches and all that, and then, like, guns the size of a little Bow Wow, and it's like, you're not scared. It's like, we're gonna run them down the block, So, and then so then, instead of you saying the police are brutalizing me, it's gonna be the people, the gangsters in the hood are brutalizing me because there's nobody to stop them.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. We'll end on that, because a theory I have no evidence to back this up, but just from my own growing up in this time and everything like that. When Rodney King happened, that was a crazy thing. That was a huge, big moment, and he didn't die. They just beat him up. I'm not trying to minimize it, but in the scheme of things, he didn't actually get killed. So what it seems like the police of that generation there definitely may have been racial motives, but it wasn't this fear. They didn't have the fear to where, okay, I have to kill this guy because he's going to kill me. Whereas I feel like the generation that was growing up after that, what happened, the rise of gangster rap, and then the images that you talk about, the rappers with the big guns and, glamorizing like this gangster thug lifestyle and stuff, even if you're not really that person. And partly that's, the music industry saying, hey, people are buying this, so we're going to maximize on it. But if you're a kid, especially in a rural community where you've never seen a black person in your life, and all the images of black people that you see are these threatening, huge gun waving people. And then all of a sudden, okay, you become 18, 19, 20. All right, we're going to make you a police officer. But you're not going to be a police officer in, bumfuck farmland. We're going to make you a police officer in Detroit, in DC, in Chicago, because you got to earn your stripes or whatever the system is. And so now this image that you had of these people, again, not defending it, right, but now the people that they grew up seeing as these gangsters, as these scary people, they are having to interact with them on a regular basis. And the second it even seems like it could be a threat, it's like all they do, because you could tell in those videos, those people are like, they're not reacting with strength. They're reacting because they're scared. They're like, and not, again, which I can't stress enough, I'm not defending it, because those people definitely should not be police officers. I think that we definitely need to kind of, it's kind of like you were in the military. I mean, they would be picky about who they let go into a war zone, right? It's not like there's people, if you have a bad toe, they're getting, it's like, yeah, we're not sending you to war. So but anybody can become a cop, which is kind of stupid. I think that, there definitely can be psychological tests and stuff like that. But what do you think about, because, about these people who are growing up, and, instead of Rodney King just being beat up, now it's just, there is no other alternative besides death, it seems like, in these interactions.
An interesting perspective, what you were saying about, how some people grow up and their only images of black people are, like 50 Cent and stuff like that. Not even like 50 Cent is a real regular person, but the image that 50 Cent puts on, where he's like,
yeah,
super cock diesel gangster with all the guns in the world, and that I can see how that someone could be overly afraid of that. So like that's an interesting that's a good perspective to put on it. But I mean, I think a lot of also what happens is that, you know, all of the traffic stops that go perfectly fine and nobody gets shot or hit, we don't hear about those. And then we also don't hear about all the traffic stops where a cop pulls up and gets shot and left and bleeds out in the street. And then we don't even know, that doesn't get reported. There's no parades, there's no protests. We only hear about the traffic stops that go wrong where a black person is gets beat up or killed by a white officer. So it gives off the impression that this is the only thing that is happening. It's only what you see on TV. Like, so if they showed everything in that proportionate, and we could see that, oh, you know, sometimes a black person might be belligerent and not get shot, or sometimes a black person will shoot a white officer and nobody will care, or sometimes a white person will have a black guy pull a gun on him and take the gun away and arrest him without incident. We don't see any of those things. All we see is the ones that go horribly wrong. So we get this perception that policing is just horribly wrong all the time. And I don't think that that's necessarily the case, but that's what gets the clicks. That's what gets people to pay attention. Nobody's going to click on, hey, look at this perfectly fine traffic stop. You know, nobody thinks about that, you know? So it's kind of one of those weird societal things, I think, you know? So I don't really think that there's an epidemic of police killing black people. I just think that whenever, like, if you have a country of 330 million people and 30 million of those people are black, and let's say, you know, 9 of those black people get killed every year under, you know, questionable circumstances, that's still like less, that's like 0.00 something percent, you know, so it shouldn't happen at all. But I mean, when you have a society that's this big, you know, sometimes people are going to make mistakes. And I think that we should look at it to scale, basically. And we should look at things that are the most dangerous to black people and the things that are least dangerous to black people, or the things that are most dangerous to us as Americans, and so on and so forth. It's like you're way more likely to die of, you know, heart disease, diabetes, but nobody cares about that stuff. They want to say, if a cop shoots me for, you know, going 55 or 54, you know, that's like a lightning strike chance of happening, basically.
You know? Yeah, no, I mean, it's a tough thing to definitely talk about because, you know, like for me, I've had definitely bad interactions with the police, but I know that there's both sides. When I talk about that, it's going to be like a person saying, well, you haven't had as bad of an interaction as I have, or you must have been doing something wrong. So it's like, and like almost so many different things, I do feel like a nomad. I feel like, but I try to be in a way that helps me, because I feel like it gives me perspective to try to be as unbiased with these things as possible. Because I think you are right. I mean, obviously, if police were killing every person they stopped, I mean, it would just be, there'd be like no people left, you know, it'd just be it would be a pretty unpopulated country. So yeah, I think it's just, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where there's so many different issues with the media only portraying negative stories. So the same media that may have, you know, in the 90s constantly portrayed negative stories about black people now is portraying negative stories about police. And because the negativity is just like the Jerry Springer show or anything like that. It's just, you're not going to get viewers if you're just having this love story every time. So it's definitely something that so many different things need to be fixed. And we as people, I think if we start saying, hey, telling media or news or corporations, we would actually prefer positive outcomes, then maybe positive outcomes will actually happen. It's kind of a weird kind of thing, right?
I think it goes. It's human nature, though. Like I heard this one person put it like, the bad news is the important news. You know, so people focus on bad news. It's like, if I bring it like if I put, you know, 10 pies in front of you right now, and I say one of these pies is poison, but the other 9 are totally fine. The important pie is the poison pie. You know, you're gonna have questions to find out. You're not going to care about the 9 great pies. You care about, you know.
Oh, so, yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, I can't. Now I can't eat pie.
There it is. You know, it's a survival mechanism. It's like, it doesn't matter how good the other 9 pies are if one of them will kill me. You know, it's like, I think a lot of our survival mechanisms as people are starting to work against us as we get older as a species. And I think that's just, one of those things that we have to be smarter about. Us smart people that should stay in politics.
Yeah.
Be smarter about it, basically.
Yeah, and I think, again, I know that we're, in terms of a species, that is ingrained into us as a species, but I think as Americans particularly, I'll never forget that this was like in 2004, 2005. I was definitely younger, and I was flipping through the channels, and like the American news channels were like crazy terrorism at an all-time high, all these like crazy fearful stories. And then I flipped to like the Canadian news, and it's like, so the highlight story of today, New York decides to start selling our Canadian hot dogs. Isn't that nice? And it's like, that was their big story of the night. Like, so I do think there's a cultural thing. I think we, whether it's the Wild West in us or, the self-centeredness, we, it's the same thing why I agree where socialized healthcare here, fully socialized healthcare may be a problem, because in like the UK, like I've talked to my friend Barry, who's from England, or some other European people that I know, they grew up in this community way of thinking. So it's not about me, it's about we, so I'm not going to go to a doctor that I don't need to go to. Whereas I feel like with us, we have entitlement so much in us, whether it's a capitalist system or a socialist system, we are going to find ways to abuse that system. We're going to find ways to say, if it's public health care and I never have to pay for a doctor's appointment, I'm going to go to the doctor if I have an itch on my arm. So I can see that point of view, where it's like, I'm not going to do my part in taking care of my health because my health care is paid for. Whereas Europeans, a lot more active, a lot more healthy. So there's definitely cultural things that, have to be changed if I feel like we want other things changed as well.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. But on that note, man, it's crazy. That's been like almost 2 hours. That pretty much flew by. But I'm gonna end this just saying you gotta start a podcast. I know I've been putting the heat on you. You have to do something, man. You're just, you're definitely fun to talk to. Obviously, that from how many people engage. You have a Facebook that's not even a normal person's Facebook. It's just basically it's like its own like mini political website.
I'm working on this Instagram thing. I'm gonna start putting out more content on there. Like I put like little jokes on there and stuff like that, little skits. So I'm gonna start, building on that. I want to do like a fitness thing at some point. So I'm gonna start expanding on this social media empire thing, and we'll see where it goes, right?
That's what's up, man. Well, yeah, appreciate you being on the pod. You have a wonderful night, man. Be safe out there, and we'll probably do this again soon. So,
all right, I'll see you next week for Obama, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll be getting them on.
All right, later.
All right, man.
Welcome to Golden City. We know it's gritty. Grew up bad boys, never knowing did